All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Thermal Gard Podcast. And today we actually have our first politician on, Susan Manchester. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah. So it's kind of crazy. We just met at a ribbon cutting and you were nice enough to really come on without knowing me from anybody. So I appreciate that.
My pleasure. I like the element of surprise, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So Susan, I would love to just know more about you as a person and more about your story. So let's kind of start from the beginning. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up just outside of Lima in Waynesfield, Ohio, which is a little town in Auglaize County, and grew up on my family farm out that way and went to Ohio State for school. And it was while I was a student at Ohio State that I really got interested in public service. I did an internship for Congressman Jim Jordan out in Washington, D.C., and that's when I fell in love with it. I was doing basic stuff, answering phones, sorting through mail, but I loved every second of it. Loved being able to be part of the legislative process. And that's what really got me started on this whole journey.
Yeah.
And what were you studying at OSU?
I studied political science and psychology. So trust me when I say I was thrilled that there was an actual job I could get with a political science degree. So that was also part of the thrill of going to DC, is recognizing, hey, there's actually a lot of job opportunities out here.
Yeah. Let's take it back to high school, though, for a second. Out in Waynesfield, very rural community. Love Waynesfield, but were you into sports? Did you help out on the farm? What was high school like for you?
I was very into music, actually. I played trumpet in the band and actually participated in a lot of area concert bands, orchestras. I was in the Lima Symphony Youth Orchestra. Shout out to them. They were really instrumental, no pun intended, in my interest in music and getting involved in that. I also did choir and theater. I was your all-around music kid. Sports, not really my thing. I think every team in Waynesfield was better off without me on it. So I kind of stayed away from that, but was more into the music and academic kind of stuff.
Yeah. What instruments did you play?
I played trumpet and piano, and then I sing.
Okay. Gotcha. Out of all three of those, what's your favorite?
I will say now I miss playing the trumpet the most. It's a little harder to come by opportunities to do that. I miss being a part of concert bands, orchestras, doing those kind of organized music ventures. I just don't have the time really to be involved in stuff like that, and I do miss it. But thankfully with singing and even playing the piano, I've been able to do that in a number of different ways. I sing and play piano at my church, or I did for a long time. And then I've also had the opportunity to sing the national anthem a few times, which has been very fun and very rewarding.
That's awesome. If somebody wants to contact you to sing the national anthem, how do they do that?
Contact the office, but no guarantees. It's the most nerve-wracking song to sing. I mean, everybody knows the melody. They know the lyrics. And how many times have you heard the national anthem? I mean, probably thousands of times. So everybody's got some opinions on how it should be done. So it's a real honor to do it, but it's very nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Nerding out a little bit. It's a very dynamic song as far as the highs, the lows. Yeah.
It's difficult.
Takes
Yeah.
you through everything.
It's a difficult one, but
that's awesome.
We have fun.
Yeah. So what led to the decision to go to Ohio State? And did you know before you went there what you wanted to do?
So I actually went to Ohio State wanting to pursue the psychology route. I wanted to be a therapist or counselor or something like that. But when I kind of learned more about what it would take to get there, I wasn't as interested in a lot of the grad school work, that kind of thing. And I started studying political science just because I was interested in it and I had the time. And I did this internship in Washington, D.C., and that's really where my love for public service took off. So I went into college, very typical millennial fashion, not knowing exactly what I wanted to do, had somewhat of an idea. I knew what I liked, but really did find my way through doing an internship and getting that hands-on experience.
And how did you get that internship? Like, did you just kind of hear about it and you're like, oh, I'll apply and see what happens? Or did you see it and you're like, this should be mine?
So Ohio State has a program where you can go to Washington for, at the time we were on quarters, you could go for a quarter, get all kinds of class credits, and get that internship experience there. So it was partially through the program that I got led to an internship on Capitol Hill. But because Congressman Jordan is our congressman, I had the opportunity to meet him a few months prior and had mentioned that I'd be interested in doing something like that. And so I got connected to the right people in his office, and there we were.
Gotcha. So what advice would you give to somebody nearing the end of their high school career, looking at college? They have no idea what they want to do. What can you tell them?
Yeah, I would first of all say, know at least what your interests are. Are you a science and math kind of person? Do you like writing papers? Do you like memorizing facts? Are you into history? I mean, get to know yourself and understand your interests. I think college really is a great way to discover those interests in a much deeper, more meaningful way. And I think that that's partially what it's there for, but you don't want to go in totally blind. And I do give this next generation of incoming college students a lot of credit, because I feel like they are way more prepared than I was heading into college and kind of having an idea of what they wanted. But truly what made all the difference for me was that hands-on experience in an internship. And so that's why I will always advocate for places like Ohio State, because you're in the city of Columbus. You have access to so many different industries, whether it be healthcare, business, government, and you can find those hands-on experiences a little easier. So I think that's really important for any student, no matter what your interest is.
That's awesome. All right. So take us through college experience, the good, the bad, stuff you liked, stuff you didn't like, and how it grew you as a person.
I loved going to college. I mean, it was great for me. And I would say the other thing about college is find a way to do it debt-free. That's student loan debt, unfortunately, holds a lot of people back once they graduate. And I think if you can find a way, if that means going to a community college for a couple of years or going to a state school like Ohio State that is more affordable, I think it's important to look at those options, because you do not want to graduate and be saddled with lots of debt. That's just going to be hard in the future. So I loved going to school, and I really loved my majors, psychology, political science. I was very active with an organization called Campus Crusade for Christ while I was there, and that's really where I found my community. Something that people often hesitate about with Ohio State is how big it is, especially coming from Waynesfield. I graduated with a class of 50 people. I think I had been with about 95% of those people since kindergarten. So I know that for some, the idea of going to the largest state school in the country is not necessarily appealing. But the amazing thing is there's something for everybody at a school like Ohio State. I found my community in Campus Crusade for Christ. There are a lot of different student organizations and areas of interest that you can get involved with and find your people. And I think that's one of the best parts about the college experience.
Yeah. So then nearing the end of college, what was kind of in your sights? What was in your aim? What were you looking forward to after?
So when I did that internship in Washington, that was my junior year of college, and I knew I had to come back and finish my degree. But honestly, I was set on going back to DC and working full time. But in the meantime, because of my involvement with Campus Crusade, I had the opportunity to spend a year in Venezuela doing mission work with them. And that was a really, really formative experience. Just being out of the country, seeing a place like Venezuela firsthand, getting to know the people there and even understand their culture. I mean, that really proved to be an invaluable experience for me right after I graduated. So I did that for a year, and then started looking for jobs in DC and had an interview, I think, a few days after I landed back in the States, and they offered me the job on the spot. So 2 weeks later, I moved to DC and was off and running.
Awesome.
So for Venezuela, were you in a more rural area there or a city?
I was in a city. The city was Valencia, which is south of Caracas, a lot smaller than Caracas, but they had a large university there. And so we were doing like ministry outreach at that university campus. So it really, I mean, there's a lot going on with Venezuela right now, and I'm honestly so thankful for the time I spent there. It's a beautiful country, and I sincerely hope that it gets to a place where people can go visit it again, and that it becomes a thriving and prosperous nation because they have a lot to offer and the people are amazing.
Yeah.
How was it adapting to the culture? Because I make the assumption that it was different than, being here in the U.S.
Very much so. I will say, the U.S. tends to value timeliness and efficiency, and my personality responds very well to that value. It's not quite valued as much down there. And, but what I appreciate is the culture is very relational. So I would say the people in general really prioritize relationships over everything else. And so sometimes that means we run late, and that's okay. But admittedly, for my American brain, that was a little hard to deal with sometimes, but I also learned something from it. So that's good.
Yeah. So spending a year there, can you just share with us one story?
Man.
I'm sure you have a lot.
Yeah. So I will say it was very insightful to see socialism firsthand. And we were working, obviously, with college students, and they were studying for their various degrees. We had students that were studying to become engineers, doctors, what have you. And on that campus, the professors would frequently strike. And this was never something that was very organized. We would show up to campus some days and there wouldn't be any professors there because they had chosen to strike that day. And for the students, it was incredibly disruptive to their education because they would also come to school thinking they were going to class and then there wouldn't be a professor there to teach it. Not only would that happen, but because the professors went on strike so much, it delayed the process by which you could obtain your degree. So imagine thinking you're going to graduate a certain time, and then that gets delayed by 6 months just because your professors are on strike all the time because they're not getting paid enough, and you just have to deal with it. And I think for me, it was, I saw a lot of examples like that where working hard didn't really get you anywhere. And they were often stymied from doing the things they wanted to do because of factors beyond their control. And unfortunately, I think that's really the downside of a system like that. And seeing that firsthand was just really insightful. But at the same time, there were lots of positive things as well. Those beaches in Venezuela, probably the most beautiful beaches I've ever been to in my life. And we would go, like times when we would go to the beach, they were remote enough. You had to take a boat to get there, and like they would serve fish fresh out of the water right there on the beach. I mean, it was amazing. So I can't say enough good things about it. And again, I sincerely hope it's a place that people can travel to.
Yeah, I love fresh fish cooked up. There's really nothing better.
Right?
That's awesome. Okay, so you get back 2 days, you interview, you go to DC. How'd you even hear about this job? What was this job? And who'd you interview with?
So it was a job in Congressman Jordan's office, actually. And I knew about it because of my relationships with the people who were still working there that I'd interned with. And so the person I interviewed with was the same boss I had when I was an intern. And I think that's another reason why I really advise college students to pursue internships and those hands-on experiences, because the relationships you develop are invaluable and you never know what it could lead to in the future. Maybe if it's not necessarily a place that you want to work for, that relationship could lead you to something else. And that's also important. So, yeah, I just interviewed with Jordan's office and had the honor of working there for about 4 years. And then eventually made my way back home.
Gotcha. So let's dig into those first couple of years. You moved to DC. What were your job duties? What was it like adjusting from Venezuela to DC? Take us through some of that.
Yeah, it was very fun. DC is a great place to be as a young professional. I mean, lots of young people. Kind of the joke is that the country is run by a bunch of 20 and 30-year-olds, and it's absolutely true. I mean, on Capitol Hill, it is mostly young people out of college and in their 20s in a lot of these positions, working for members of Congress. So it's a great way to get to know people. And I, got involved with a church there that I really loved and developed a lot of community with as well. And my responsibilities, I was eventually what's called a legislative assistant for Congressman Jordan. And so I covered different issue areas for him, like healthcare was one of the big ones. I actually covered the Judiciary Committee work for him. And so anytime people from the district were coming to meet with him, or industry professionals who wanted to come and talk about different legislation that we were working on and on the Hill, I would be part of those meetings, and I was kind of his liaison on those particular issues. So it was a great learning experience. And that's honestly what I still love about working in government is you get to learn about everything. I mean, because I joke, government's going to touch your life whether you want it to or not. And it's very interesting to see how different industries are affected by the policies we do at the federal and state level. And so when they have an interest in it, for better or worse, they come in and talk to us. And it really is a great way to constantly be learning new issues and how we can better navigate through them as a governing body.
Yeah. Can you take us through like a day in the life, what that looked like?
Mm-hmm. So the office, typically it's like a 8 to 5 kind of schedule, but you also never know when a late night vote might happen and you have to stay at the office, or something doesn't go according to plan, and so you have to stay later. It does require a lot of flexibility, I will say. And so that's probably a big reason why a bunch of 20 and 30-year-olds are working on Capitol Hill, because they have that kind of flexibility. But, most days you go in. If the congressman was in town, there would probably be committee hearings. And so anytime the Judiciary Committee would meet, I would go to those committee hearings. We would prepare what's called a line of questioning for the congressman. So, for any committee hearing, you invite witnesses to come in and testify, whether it be on a bill, on a particular issue. And then each member of the committee gets 5 minutes to ask whatever questions they want. And so I was expected to prepare that line of questioning for the congressman and then just be there in committee in case there was something he needed. Then typically I would take a number of meetings during the day, and they could range from, folks who were visiting from Ohio that represented the Ohio Farm Bureau coming in to talk about agriculture issues, or people in the healthcare industry who wanted to come in and talk about NIH funding for a certain disease research. I mean, you cover the range. And so, again, that's what I loved about that job. And what I love about my current role is it's always something new. It's always something different. And you could go from healthcare to education to agriculture to energy all in one day.
I wonder was it a lot of Ohio people that you were working with because it's the Ohio congressman, or was it people from all over the country?
Both. It was a lot of people coming in from Ohio to visit D.C. and get to see the congressman in action while he's in D.C. But then it was also people from all over the country who had an interest in what he was working on or what his committee was working on. It's, again, amazing how many people are affected by what the federal government does.
Yeah. What are some maybe lessons you learned, or maybe some things you picked up during those 4 years that translate to today?
So honestly, the whole structure of how a bill becomes a law, and even just how to run a bill and build up the kind of support you need in order to get something done, it was an invaluable lesson that I learned very early on. When I was working for Congressman Jordan, he's always had a reputation as one of the most conservative members of Congress. And so I worked for him, I think, only during times that the Republicans had the majority in the House. So when that happens, the Republicans get to set the agenda. And in general, Congressman Jordan could be aligned with that. But a lot of times, Congressman Jordan wanted to take it to the next level and say, well, it's great that we're doing this as House Republicans, but I think we could be a little more conservative in these areas, So a lot of times, the things that he wanted to do required a lot of work finding other partners who would want to partner with him on that. And so I think that is an important lesson that I learned, that in order to get things done in any legislative body, you need the support of your colleagues, like to a certain level. You have to gain critical mass of support in some way, shape, or form. And maybe you don't get all of what you want, but you at least push the envelope a little bit, right? And so I think that was something that was huge. And then, just learning how to engage with people and hear them out. What I found every single time, especially on really tough issues that maybe, the congressman wasn't 100% aligned with the people who were coming in to meet with us, or there just wasn't much that we could do within our capacity in that office. People want to be heard. They just want you to listen to them and feel like they're heard when they talk about their issues. And I think that's something I've also really carried with me into this position is I can't always fix everything, and I can't always do something meaningful to change somebody's situation, but I can always listen. And that's something that I really aim to do.
Yeah. So when you're gaining people's support, especially, people that are in politics or maybe people in business, what have you found maybe are some good keys that just real quick you can give to us just for advice? Like, hey, we need support from these people or this group or this person. Maybe we don't know them. Maybe we do know them. What's some things we can implement ourselves?
Yeah, I think it's about finding out what motivates people and finding out what people care about, because especially when you're working in any kind of legislative body, whether it's Congress or the state legislature, each member was duly elected by the people that they represent, and each of them were given the opportunity to represent that voice and to work on some of their own priorities. And so nobody runs for office without an agenda, and whether that agenda is inspired by the people they represent or by themselves, they have an agenda. And it's important to know what that agenda is and even how you can be helpful in them meeting that, right? And I think that applies across any industry. When you're looking to build relationships and gain support, you have to think about, well, what's motivating to them? What encourages them? What gets them going? And how can I maybe come alongside them in that? I think that's valuable.
Yeah. So I guess coming to the end of that job, you decided to move home, you decided to run. Can you walk us through the stuff leading up to that and what made you actually pull the trigger and move?
Yeah, well, DC, it was very fun for a young professional, but it kind of reaches its limits. A lot of people, about the 5-year mark, they decide whether they're staying or going. And I was nearing that point, and I was just ready for something different and really felt the pull to come back home, which was shocking even to me. I mean, I was very excited to go to college and then live in DC, and I never thought that coming back to Waynesfield was going to be in my future, but I'm so glad that that's really where I ended up. I mean, when it came to my deciding to come back to Ohio, there wasn't even a question. I could have moved back to Columbus or someplace like that, but I had no desire to do that. I was wanting to come back home, which was great. And honestly, it was a combination of that and the fact that during that time, this was around like 2014, 2015, Ohio was really making headlines nationally for leading the country in opioid overdose deaths. And I thought, man, there's some issues at home that I want to be part of the solution. And so that was also a big reason why I just wanted to come back here.
Yeah. So what did it look like moving home, starting to campaign or run, or walk us through that process?
Yeah, looking back, I moved home about as irresponsibly as you possibly could. I had no plan. I did not have a job. I moved back in with my parents. I had no plan whatsoever. I knew that I wanted to do something outside of politics. That was really the big thing. And so I did I had applied for some jobs before moving back, but wasn't successful. And it was a rough couple of months when I first moved home because, I was adjusting to life back in Ohio. And then I was really not having any success applying for jobs outside of politics. But thankfully, I had some relationships with folks in the political realm, and that eventually led to me working for the Ohio Republican Party in 2016. And so it really wasn't my first choice, but it turned out to be the best thing for me because I was what's called a field organizer, which in a campaign is like the most grueling job of all time. You're the one that's calling people to recruit them to knock on doors and make phone calls for the candidate. And I learned a lot about what it takes to run a successful campaign and even just what the campaign life looks like. And I got to meet everybody that was active locally, which was a huge advantage when I actually decided to run for office myself.
Yeah. For those people who have never worked on a campaign, can you pull back the curtain a little bit and discuss what it actually looks like? How much work is involved?
Well, it's not as cool as they make it look in the movies, I will say. But honestly, my days were usually spent going out in some neighborhood and knocking on doors for at least 2 to 3 hours. And then I'd come back to the office and spend the afternoon maybe planning out where I was going to knock on doors next, making phone calls. And these are like cold calls to people, asking them, hey, do you want to support the Republican ticket in 2016? Come work for us for free. It's not the easiest thing, but again, it's amazing. The people who are ready and willing to do that are amazing, and you're so pleasantly surprised, I will say, when those gem of a person comes along who's just ready to get out there and do the work, and it's great. So you spend a lot of time on the phone trying to recruit volunteers. And then my evenings were spent making phone calls on behalf of the Republican ticket and, just sealing the deal for us.
And you said that was in 2015?
16. Yeah, 16.
So do you think that campaigning has changed from then to now in about a 10-year basis?
Fundamentally, no. Like, I think people have a lot of funny ideas about campaigning in the modern era. And truthfully, with the advent of social media, there's obviously a lot of cool new ways that you can get your message out there. But at the end of the day, the most effective way to reach people is by knocking on doors and sending out mailers. And that sounds very old school, but the reason why it's so effective is because you are guaranteed to either talk to or get your message to a prospective voter. On social media, your message gets out into the ether and is sent to a lot of people that probably can't even vote for you. When I first ran for office, I obviously launched a Facebook page, and I remember I was so excited because I got to like 500 likes in a day or something, but a lot of those people couldn't vote for me. It was very nice that they liked my page, but they were friends from DC or, friends from college, like people who don't live anywhere near the district. And so unfortunately, I think that's the mistake a lot of folks make is they get excited about these modern ways to campaign that are helpful. I do use social media still, and when I've run competitive primaries, I've absolutely invested in social media and using that as a way to get my message across. But truly, the most effective is knocking on doors, sending out mail, making phone calls.
So you went from working for Jim Jordan, kind of being in his office in DC, helping him work on all these different, informing him about information, all those different kinds of things. And then you came back and you worked on a campaign. I wonder if you could talk about the difference between working in legislation versus working on a campaign.
Yeah.
How those two worlds are so different.
Totally different worlds. So I always compare the official policy side to like the marketing side. you are focused on getting a message out there, but you're also, you have a lot of factors at play when it comes to crafting policy. Like we talked about earlier with gaining the right support and the coalition behind you to get your legislation across the finish line. Like that's a very different skill than campaigning, which is like sales. I mean, it is about reaching a certain goal every day, making enough calls. You know, it's like, well, if you want to get 5 volunteers, you probably need to make 100 phone calls. And if you want to talk to 10 people at the door, you need to be sure and knock on 100 doors. You know, it's very metrics based, I would say, the campaign stuff. And it's kind of just a matter of getting up and doing it consistently every single day, which I enjoy. I really do. But I missed maybe the more like variation and intellectual stimulation that comes with the policymaking side. So for me, I like doing both. And what's nice about my current position is I get a taste of all of it. You know, I get to do plenty of campaign stuff and plenty of official stuff. And I like having all of that in the mix. But I would say if you're someone that's interested in working in the field, it's really important to determine if you're a campaign person or if you're a policy person, because they're very, very different areas.
Awesome. All right. So you finish the campaign, you decide to run. Take us through that first race where you're getting your name out there. You're talking to people in the community. What was that like?
Yeah, the first race, there's nothing like your first race. I mean, it's just so much fun and it's so exciting because you don't know what you're getting yourself into. And I think that that's a good thing in a lot of ways. Like if most candidates knew what it would be like, a lot of people probably wouldn't run. So it was a competitive 3-way primary. And in the district that I represent now and that I first ran in, the primary is what decides the race. You know, it's a very Republican area. And so that was the most important hurdle to get through. So my first race was in 2018, and I had 2 opponents, and one of them had a very well-known last name, and the other was, you know, well-respected, active in the community. We were all in our 30s, which was kind of unusual. I think, you know, a lot of times you expect there to be older people who are running, but we were all pretty young, and we were all running for the first time. So that kind of evened the playing field in some ways. But I don't even know where to begin with that first race. It was crazy. But I mean, I will say the best campaign advice I've ever received, and I tell it to everybody who wants to run for office: raise money, knock on doors. Everything else is a distraction. And that is completely true, especially when you're running in a race like for state representative or state senate, something like that. I would spend all day, every day, knocking on doors for the most part. I did have a job with Big Brothers Big Sisters in Lima, so I would work half the day here, and then I would drive to some random neighborhood in the district and knock on doors until dark, and then get up and do it all over again. So, you know, it's not like that really was the bulk of how I spent my time. And then once you get closer to the election, that's when you get into more of the, like, what is, I guess, well, let me back up. Your message and how you want to present yourself as a candidate is always the first thing you think about, right? Like, why do I want to run? What do I want people to know about me? You lead with that, but truly it is all about getting out there and meeting more people all the time.
When you were canvassing like that, and it was your first race, so there probably was a lot of nerves. How was it speaking with people who maybe didn't agree with you or like wasn't on your political party or in the same political party as you?
So again, the beauty about knocking on doors is you only knock on Republican doors. So I mean, for the most part, you can get lists that show you, okay, these are where the Republican voters are, and so that's where you spend your time. But obviously, I would come across people who were supportive of my opponents or, didn't agree with me for whatever reason. And it's hard. I mean, I think you have to have a thick skin and just sometimes take the L, like, all right, they're not for me. It's okay. I gotta find more people who are for me. I think if anything, it was always a motivator. Like if something would happen, because campaigns, it gets so dramatic and there's all kinds of gossip and it's just crazy. And that's why it's so important to focus on raise money, knock on doors, everything else is a distraction. But anytime something would come out like, oh, your opponent did this or your opponent did that, I would just take it in and then go head to a neighborhood and knock on doors and make sure I had some good conversations with people, So it's hard. I mean, I hate being rejected. And so, I guess I face my fears every day. But it is important to use it as your motivator because for every one person that doesn't like you, if you can find 3 more that do, you're in good shape.
Your old window cleaner is trash. Ditch it and get Dudley on duty. It's what the pros use. Can you speak a little more about the position you ran for and what made you think, oh, I can do this, or now's the time to do it?
Yeah, so I ran for state representative first, and it was something I was aware that the seat would come open and was really interested in it because it was obviously in the legislative side and very much aligned with what I had done in Congressman Jordan's office in D.C. I felt like the experience I had working in government, working in politics, was going to be invaluable for being in that position myself. And honestly, in that final couple years in DC, as I looked around and saw different members of Congress who would come to Washington, I saw a lot of people who got there and lost sight of who they are, where they came from, and the people who elected them. And I felt like I want to see a different brand in my elected official. And why not be the brand myself, And so all those things kind of made me think, well, let's just give this a shot.
Also, were you kind of raised political, like your parents kind of talking about politics a lot and stuff? So when you told them that this is kind of the route you wanted to take, how did they react?
That's a great question. So my family, I wouldn't call us political, but my parents definitely had the news on first thing in the morning and in the evening. They didn't shy away from political conversations. I think, frankly, until I went to college, and then even more so when I went to DC, I saw how much my upbringing had informed my political philosophy, and just how, being raised on the farm and in a small business family and knowing the value of hard work and even just being able to be financially responsible within your own household, like those are the kinds of things that are definitely core values of mine that I know came from the way I was raised. And I don't think I really fully appreciated it until I got away from it and saw, oh, this really is who I am. Like there's no shying away from it. My dad was on the school board and my mom was very active in the community. And they were both youth group leaders at our church. Like they're both just the kind of people who really put community service as a top priority. And so I think that whole value of giving back was something that I was definitely raised with. But running for office in the capacity that I wanted to do it was never something that my family really talked about, or
Right,
like it wasn't a big thing for us. So my parents were very excited and very supportive, and I'm so grateful for them because when I first ran, I wasn't married. I was still single, living on my own, and it would have been very hard to do without their support.
So let's talk about the what ifs. If you wouldn't have won, did you have a backup plan? Did you have any ideas on what you wanted to do?
You can't talk like that. I mean, if I wouldn't have won, come on. I'm kidding. Yes, I had a deep fear of not winning, and I had no plan. I mean, again, when I moved back to Ohio, didn't really have a plan. When I ran for office, there was no plan B. I mean, I was all in, focused on winning.
Burn the ships.
Yep, that's really how it was. And so, yeah, if I hadn't won, I have no idea. But I knew I'd be okay. And I knew I'd find another job. And I still feel that way today. You know, I had another primary when I ran for re-election in 2022. Got through that. And then when I ran for Senate in 2024, I actually ran unopposed, which was a huge gift, not something I was expecting. But all along the way, you know, politics is it's an ever-changing game, and anything could happen that could change something for you personally as a candidate, as an elected official. And I've just always had the attitude that, like, this job is not the most important thing about me. It's a job. And so if I need to get another job, I will get another job. And that's, I think, how you have to approach it. Unfortunately, I see a lot of people who make the job their identity, and that's when they get in trouble, you know, because then they'll do anything to keep it. And I don't ever want to fall into that category.
Yeah. So what is your identity? Because like you said, a lot of politicians, it is in the job. What's your identity?
Yeah, really, first and foremost, my identity is in my faith in Jesus Christ alone. And that is the most important thing about me. And that's something that will matter now and, frankly, into eternity. Everything else about me isn't going to matter when I'm dead. And so, you know, that's something that I really hold on to. And I think my faith has definitely informed my approach to this, because you can't have a temporary perspective on anything. Like this life is too short, and there's so much more beyond it. And so I think that's really where my identity comes from.
Amazing. Great answer. So I guess let's talk about some of the differences, because a lot of people, when they think politics, they think federal level. Not a lot of people think state level. And when I've talked to different state representatives and stuff like that, they told me the overwhelming amount of questions they get is federal issues that they have nothing to do with, or almost nothing to do with. So can you walk us through, like, what a state representative actually does, what the issues they handle, just some of the, normalize what that looks for us? Because a lot of people, again, they think federal, they don't think state.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will say something similar to the federal level in the state level is we are responsible first and foremost for passing a balanced budget for the state of Ohio. It's actually in the Ohio Constitution that we must balance the budget, and I think that is a really important aspect of the way that our state is run. So we spend the first 6 months of the year in odd years. So 2025 would be an example. From January to June, we were basically 100% focused on passing the state budget. And that really is a huge responsibility. Our budget runs, depending on how you calculate it, from $70 to $100 billion. So that's a lot of money, and it's the taxpayers' money. And so it's important that we allocate it accordingly. So really, that's a huge responsibility that the state government has. And I think that Ohio has been run extremely well when it comes to our financial situation in the past, decade or so. Aside from that, I still work on healthcare issues, agriculture issues, education issues. They all come to the table. I think, what I love about state government policy is that most of what we do can impact the lives of everyday Ohioans, for better or worse. So versus the federal level, there's all kinds of stuff they do that nobody really understands or feels the impact of, right? But they still have an opinion about it. And so, that's what I really enjoy about state government is a lot of the issues that we work on have a direct impact. One of the issues that I've really been heavily involved with is foster care and improving our foster care system. And that is one. I've, passed a number of bills relating to that and have heard from folks directly who have benefited from the new laws that we passed. And I think that's one of the best parts about being in state government.
What inspired you to kind of, I don't want to say focus, but like worry about the foster care system? Like, was there a story that you heard or an experience you witnessed where you're like, oh, we need to make some changes for the better?
Yeah, when I was in Washington, there was a group of former foster youth who were part of an advocacy organization, and I unfortunately can't remember what the name of it was, but they came out to DC and were just advocating for foster youth who were emancipated from the system. So this is something that many people don't know. If you are in foster care, you're considered a ward of the state. It is the state's responsibility to take care of you. When you turn 18, you are let loose. And for a lot of these kids, if they were not adopted by the time they were 18, they were very much alone and maybe didn't have skills like knowing how to budget or grocery shop or do laundry or, probably didn't even have money to find housing on their own. I mean, imagine when you were 18, like, were you ready to just be an adult and live alone? I mean, some people, I'm sure, have that ability, but for most, they need a little support, a little help. So anyway, I just remember hearing the stories of these kids, and it really impacted me hard because I thought, okay, truly I believe that people are always our greatest asset in this country, in this state. And so whatever we can do to support our people and make sure that they are set up for success, especially when they are in our care, then we should do it. And so that's why I'm so passionate about foster care and making sure that those kids have every opportunity to be successful in the future.
That's awesome. If you don't mind, let's talk about you like personally. When did you guys get married?
So my husband Isaac and I, we started dating in 2018 while I was running for office. So I joke that, he's always known what he was getting himself into, and it was kind of perfect timing, really. But we got married in 2019, then the following summer.
That's awesome. And do you have any marriage advice?
Oh, boy, that's a fun question. It's really important to marry the right person. That might sound obvious, but it is really important to marry the right person. And I think, have the hard conversations early. I kind of laugh because we dated for 1 year and then got engaged. I think it's good to go through at least a year of dating so that you see your future partner in every season. But we had a lot of hard conversations those first couple months about all the tough stuff, and like what we both wanted for the future and how we viewed the world and, what we thought about finances. And I think that's important. Like, get to know that stuff early on. And if you're not a match, then early and can move on. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. So, but yeah, being married is, it's the best. I highly recommend it. I can't say enough good things about it. It is incredibly fun to have a life partner who is in it with you. And I know that I could not do this job without the support of Isaac. And he is my number one cheerleader and someone that I really can lean on for solid advice on, just what to do in any given situation. He really is my rock.
That's awesome. I completely agree. So, I think it'd be unfortunate if we had you on here and we didn't talk about COVID. You got married in 2019, but COVID was a wild time for everybody. And
Indeed.
We ask every guest who comes on about COVID, how it impacted their businesses, how they, had to learn new things, whether it's Zoom or managing people or whatever. So what was COVID like for Ohio politics?
Oh, well, it was extremely difficult. Our governor had a very, very conservative approach when it came to how to handle COVID, as you're all aware. He shut the businesses down, he shut the schools down, and, implemented a mask mandate. He did a lot of things that weren't in line with my views as a small government conservative on how we should proceed. But it was a difficult time because it was completely unknown. I think there was now looking back, there was so much conflicting information out there. I mean, I remember those first couple weeks when everything was shut down. I think for the most part, people were fairly accepting of it. Like, okay, this is something new. We don't quite know what we're dealing with. Let's just take a pause. But then it went on and on and on and became more restrictive. And I think, hindsight's always 2020, and I can't imagine what it was like to be in the governor's position with all this stuff going on. But I think that, had there been a little more flexibility, I think that would have been the better way to go. I was in my first term in office, my first year of marriage. And so, no one gives you a manual when you run for office on what to do when a global pandemic strikes and you're in leadership. I mean, so it was hard. It was very hard. And I dealt with a lot of criticism. I mean, I think the most difficult part of it was the governor was making these decisions unilaterally without the legislature's input. And that got increasingly difficult as time went on because, we're hearing from all our constituents, business owners who had basically been put out of business, people in the school system trying to educate the kids. Like, we were hearing so much from people on the ground. And I think I called the governor's office like every day during COVID because I was just hearing so much feedback from the district. But it was hard to feel like that feedback was taken seriously or taken anywhere. I mean, that was really difficult. So what I'm proud of in that is we did pass legislation that created a pathway for the legislature to have input on the governor's health orders. And I think that was critical because, frankly, there was nothing before then that there was no system for how we were going to navigate this stuff. It was just, we were all flying by the seat of our pants. And I was learning about the governor's mandates at the same time you guys were. I mean, I would tune into his press conferences also not knowing what was coming. And so I'm glad that out of that difficult time, the legislature did come up with a way to address these issues in the future so that the governor cannot unilaterally implement mandates without the legislature's input after a certain period of time. And in fact, after we passed that legislation, I was appointed to the committee that would oversee his health orders. So I felt like those were all really important steps. Obviously, things had really died down by the time we got that passed and implemented, so it didn't have an immediate impact as it was going on. But heaven forbid in the future, if there ever is something like this again, we now have a system in place where the legislature can have more input. And I think that's really important.
And with that, let's just say, hope never happens again, but something like this does happen and you guys kind of get some input. Will you guys also be able to hear from like doctors and the medical care, like, you know what I mean, to kind of get the insight on why maybe they think they should do it this way rather than the other?
Absolutely. And I think that is an important point to bring up is we're not saying let's just disregard all the expert advice that's out there. I mean, I think it's important to take that into account, but there's a lot of factors that need to be taken into account when you're making these huge, broad sweeping mandates. And I do think that the way it's set up, it would allow for the governor to implement health orders like he had been during COVID. But again, after a certain period of time, if those orders continued, the legislature had the chance to review it and potentially overturn it. And I think that's what was so difficult with COVID is even with everything that, medical professionals were saying, that the experts were saying, it would change. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was really the source of a lot of frustration, obviously, for people is, well, one day we were told don't wear masks, and then we're told we have to wear masks. And, I think when you're dealing with something like that, with so many unknowns, you do have to be a bit nimble and flexible and, okay, this is now that we've had some time for this to be in place, maybe we need to reconsider. And we as the legislature just didn't feel like that was happening enough.
Yeah.
What are some lessons about being a leader in a crisis that you might have learned during that process?
Yeah, I think, again, I always stick to you have to hear people out and you have to be a listener first. And I mean, I took a lot of very difficult phone calls with business owners, especially who had been shut down and they didn't know when they would get to reopen and were saying, hey, we're in a bad spot right now. And what are you guys going to do about it? And the tone I'm using right now is not even close to the tone that was used because, I think you have to recognize that everyone around you is in crisis too. And, at the very least, again, I can show them that I care, but it was extremely difficult because I, as an individual legislator, did not have the ability to change much of what they were doing. But what I did do is I listened to everybody, I heard them out, and I would immediately contact the governor and say, hey, this is what's going on in my district. Like, what are we going to do to change it? And I think sometimes that combination of just being the eyes and ears on the ground and making sure you're in touch with what people actually are dealing with, and then relaying that message and being the squeaky wheel, like sometimes that's the best that you can do, especially when you're not technically in charge. And again, I needed the support of a critical mass of my colleagues in order to do anything different. And there were legislators who didn't necessarily feel the same way I did about the health orders. And so, that was another factor to deal with. So I think, though, in a crisis situation, you have to hear people out and you have to be the voice of reason. Like, I wanted to be as measured as I possibly could be during that time because, unfortunately, there was a lot of people contributing to the chaos. Mm-hmm. And I think as a leader, that's not something that's helpful.
Yeah. So after that, I think you ran for re-election, correct? Mm-hmm. What was the difference between running for re-election and running for the first time? Like, what was the knowledge gap and everything like that?
Yeah, I would say, so in 2020, I did not have a primary opponent, so I got reelected pretty easily. But in 2022, I did have a primary opponent, and I think the hardest part is you have a record. And if your opponent has never run for office before, they do not. And it is very easy as a political novice to come in and say, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And see, she did this and she's terrible because she did this, but I would never do that. And I mean, I don't mean this disparagingly, but that's very easy to say. It is very easy to come in with a blank slate and have all kinds of ideas about what you're going to do once you get into office. But once you've been in office, you understand some of the challenges that arise and how, well, yeah, I do have some pretty bold ideas for things I'd like to see happen, but unless I can get 60 other people in the House of Representatives to go along with me, like, I'm probably not going to be able to implement those bold ideas into legislation. Like there's some barriers there. And so I think that really is the biggest difference. And especially when you have a record. I mean, I'm proud of my legislative record. I don't have any regrets about any votes I've taken, but it is very easy to look at someone's record and say, whoa, well, why did you vote this way on this bill, but not this way on that bill? That's just part of it.
Yeah.
When working with other representatives, with your party or the opposite party, is there a way that you kind of try to find a middle ground with maybe the opposing party to try to make not everyone happy, but try to take their factors into consideration?
Sure. Most of the bills that I have passed and signed into law have been bipartisan. They've been bills that passed unanimously or near unanimously. And it's because, first of all, most of them are issues that everybody agrees on anyway. Mm-hmm. The bill I'm really proud of that I got done this year created a health plan option for members of Farm Bureau. That was something that was really important to me as a farmer, small business owner. It's very difficult to obtain health insurance for yourself or for your employees. And so this created a pathway for that to happen. And that was a very bipartisan issue. But there were some questions that came up along the way, some things that people who were not necessarily opposed to the idea, but felt like they needed a little more assurance in the language that there wouldn't be some unintended consequences or something like that. And so I was happy to make the changes. It's really, sometimes it's not even anything huge that will get people to yes. But to your point, I mean, I would always like to work on getting people to yes, especially when it comes to supporting my bill. And if that means making a small change, sure, no problem. Now, if it means making a change that would fundamentally upset the intent of the bill, then I'm not going to do that, But I think, again, that's what's great about working in the state legislature is a lot of issues we pass are very bipartisan, recognized as good for everybody, but those never get much airtime, as you can imagine. Yeah.
So I guess two questions I have. One is if there's somebody, maybe they're still in school at whatever level, but they have aspirations to run for office. Is there any tips or advice you could give them to help set themselves up now for when the time comes, they'll be more prepared?
Yes, I would say volunteer for a campaign. It's 2026. It's an election year. There are lots of people running for office that could use some help. So if you're willing and ready to do whatever work the campaign asks you to do, that will go a long way. I know people who were in the midst of getting their college degree and volunteered for a campaign and were so good that the people wanted to hire them right away and they didn't even finish college because they got hired, So I always say with any job, if you're working as a volunteer or in an internship capacity, something like that, when you're kind of at the low level, if you do excellent work on those small tasks, that will be recognized. And if you're consistent, you show up on time, you're enthusiastic, you're ready and willing to do what's asked of you, that is what people will notice. And I think that volunteering for a campaign is a great way to get the attention of people, not only the person who's running for office, but the people that are in their orbit. I mean, politics is a very small world, so it's important to get to know people not only in that capacity, but also locally. I mean, the Allen County Republican Party is fantastic. They're very organized and they have a lot of great stuff going on. I think showing up to their events and being part of what they're doing is great if you live in this area. And other county Republican parties around here, I mean, they're different ones have a lot of good stuff going on. And so that's a good way to get involved. Or if you're, on the other side of the aisle, getting involved in your local Democrat party is great. When people reach out and want to meet with me to talk about career stuff, I'm always happy to do that. And so that's something that I have done personally, but I think getting some hands-on experience either in an internship or a campaign is critical.
Awesome. And so my next question, aside from the politically correct answer of I'm focusing on my job now, what are your future aspirations? Do you have any future plans? It can be professionally or personally.
Sure. I'm focusing on my job now.
Right.
I am having a baby in May.
Congratulations.
So I am very focused on a new job of being a mom. So very, very excited about that. Thank you. We are thrilled. So that really is something that I am thinking about, but I truly love where I am. And the Senate is a 4-year term, so I will be up for re-election in 2028, and I fully intend to run again. We are term limited though, so at the end of my term, that second year, I'm not really sure what's next, and so we'll see. But I will have one child and hopefully a couple more, and we'll see what happens.
Speaking of moving from representatives to the Senate, can you talk a little bit about what the difference between those two positions are and what made you decide to make that switch?
So first off, in Ohio, we do have term limits. So as a state representative, you're limited to 4 2-year terms, so a total of 8 years. And then in the Senate, you get 2 4-year terms, again, a total of 8 years. Now, you can switch back and forth between the 2 chambers for as long as you want, as long as you can. But we do have term limits. So I knew that I would be term limited, and Matt Huffman, who was the senator prior to me, was finishing out his term. And so I just knew it would be a great opportunity to go ahead and run for the Senate. I was only in the House for 6 years, so I didn't go for my last term in the House in order to run for the Senate. But honestly, the biggest difference is it's 3 times the territory as a state representative district, and it's a 4-year term. Those are kind of the main differences. And in the Senate, there are 33 members versus the House, which has 99. So it's a very different culture, and I found that I do really enjoy, you're just in closer proximity to your colleagues. You have the opportunity to get to know them on a deeper level. And I feel like there's a lot of camaraderie in the Senate, and having a 4-year term also just takes the pressure off a little bit. In the House, a 2-year term is very short. And so you get elected, the first thing you work on is the budget, and then you're ready to ramp up your campaign again. In the Senate, there's just a little more time to kind of deliberate and work on things. And I really appreciate that about the culture. But the fundamentals of the job are virtually the same. We're passing legislation and hearing stuff out. But I think we do get to work at a bit of a different pace given the smaller number, the longer term.
Yeah, great question. And so I think we're going to transition then into one of our last segments, and that's our quick fire question segment.
Ooh, okay.
So we just ask you a list of questions. You answer as fast as you can.
All right. Let's see how fast I can go.
Yeah. They're really hard.
I'm sure.
So first question, tea or coffee to start the day?
Coffee, hands down.
1 cup?
Yes, especially now that I'm pregnant.
Oh, good answer. Good answer. What is your favorite local business besides your own?
Oh, that's a terrible question to ask a politician.
Since you're a politician, we'll let you name 3.
I can't pick favorites. Local business. Well, we are sitting in the
Central District.
Central District. Thank you. I was like, why is the name escaping me? And I do love it here. I think this building is awesome. There's a number of local businesses here. And what I love about this style is it gives a lot of entrepreneurs the opportunity to have their own space and get started. And I think that's awesome. So because we're in the Central District, I'll say that.
Great answer. What is one word to describe politics?
Oh boy. Fun is what first came to my mind. So
That's great. That's great. What made you say fun?
I do what I do because it's a lot of fun. I mean, you never know what each day is going to hold. It's a totally different thing. And I mean, everybody jokes a year is like a lifetime in politics. I mean, all the things that can happen and change within a year's time, and getting to keep up with the pace and even keep up with what the temperature of the constituency is. I mean, it's amazing how much that can change on short notice. So it's fun.
That's awesome. What would you say the biggest myth in politics is?
Where do I begin? Honestly, that we all hate each other and are at each other's throats all the time. I mean, I do think that perhaps you have more of that in Congress, but there are so many great people that I've been able to meet through this job that I never would have met otherwise. And I love that. I mean, I've developed some really strong friendships over the years and have had amazing mentors because of this. And, I think part of the reason why everyone thinks we're at each other's throats all the time is because everyone thinks that we're only motivated by our self-interest. And I'm like, well, you do have some of that, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of people who really are there for the right reasons and who want to do really good work. And I think those people need to be highlighted more often.
Yeah. Is there a specific mentor you'd like to shout out?
Oh, I will shout out. I mean, working for Jim Jordan taught me a lot, and I really appreciated his style. He was a great boss. I mean, he's a great person, a great member, but he was also really, really good to work for, which says a lot, I think, because there are some politicians who are not so great to work for, and there's things about that. But he and Matt Huffman has been a great mentor to me as well. He's, the representative from this area too. And I've been very grateful for his advice over the years.
That's awesome. Is there some sort of quote or piece of advice that you've kind of clung to your whole life that you still lean on today?
My whole life. Well, I think the biggest thing for me, I've talked about my faith and just clinging to the idea that my identity lies in Jesus Christ alone, and that nothing can change that. Nothing can take that away from me from now until eternity. I think that's something that has always stayed with me and has really been foundational for the way I live my life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, do you have any questions for us?
Oh, man. At the very end? Well, what inspired you to do a Thermal Gard podcast?
So it's funny, you're the second guest to ask us that. And the truth is, and what I told them as well, is I asked other people to do this, and they just wouldn't, or they would drag their feet because I didn't think we were really qualified or in the best position. But, enough was enough. It's important for Lima and our area, our greater area, to have this sense of camaraderie. I think over the years there's been some, maybe competition, I guess you could say, but when an area gets together and they come together as a whole, and you start to learn more about people personally, it's not just what you see on social or what you hear, professionally. You learn about them personally. It opens your eyes to, hey, we live in a great community. We have some really great people in this community who do a lot. 99% of it is not seen by everyone. And so I just wanted to get other people on here so they can tell their story, share their story, and make the community feel better, look better, sound better, just lift everybody up.
That's great.
That's why we have a
that.
podcast.
Very cool.
I do have just one last question for you. I will regret it if I don't ask. What kind of advice or insight, knowledge, because you are a politician, do you have for both sides, Republicans and Democrats both, finding like a middle ground? I think right now we are so separated by political party rather than thinking about what's best for the community in general, or the United States in general. What kind of insight do you have or advice do you have for people who don't seem to want to find some kind of friendship middle ground with the other party?
I think you need to start by looking at everyone as people first. We are all just people, and we all have come to our values and our belief system in many different ways. And unfortunately, I think part of the whole hyper-partisan divide is this idea that because you belong to a certain party, you're therefore evil. I mean, I've definitely been subject to people who assume that about me, and that doesn't help anybody. I just think that's not good. And whether you're looking at people through the lens of politics or anything else, it's never helpful to identify people as their, outward identities first. Like they're people first and foremost. And so I think focusing on that. And I think it's important to remember that there is probably always something that you can find in common with somebody else. And I take it as a personal mission, especially with people who I know could not be further away from me politically. I've had great conversations with about anything else. And I think that's a great start, is just viewing each other as people first. We're people, we're Americans, we're Ohioans. We at least have that in common. Let's start there.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Any other questions before we wrap it up?
Well, thank you guys for having me on. This was fun.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
being
for
here.
coming on. It means a lot. So, all All right, guys. Well, that was it for Susan Manchester. Thanks for tuning in. And please like, comment, subscribe, share, leave us a rating. We read all the comments and reviews. So we want to thank iHeartRadio for having us here in their studio. And we'll see you guys in the next one.